The Bible. Is it hard to understand?
When it comes to reading the Bible, the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that this is the Word of God.
The seals have been broken, and the truth is here.
And when we go throughout the scriptures, when we go throughout extra biblical records, we find that the language that God employed, that He used to create the heavens and the earth, was the Hebrew language.
Christ said, I came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But yet no one, no religious leader, no religious church out there anywhere can now identify the 12 tribes of Israel. Can we? God is quite simple, but it seems as if man makes understanding Him hard.
What are those mysteries?
The truth of your book and the truth will make you free. The Hebrew and Bible Academy, you're invited.
Living in a strange land where we don't belong, subjugated to sin, they required a song. They came to our shores, took us away. Once kings and queens, relegated to slaves. Oh, bring me home, take me to Georgia, over the water. Jerusalem calling, she's our mother. I hear her calling for me. She's calling, exiled in Babylon, all alone. He's coming to me, I'm remembering. It's in Deuteronomy. I'm praying to God, come set us free. Set us free. The nation's programmed our brains to look the other way. We were lost and ashamed, living confused with no hope. Walk around with my head hanging low. Spirit was crying for change. Then you revealed your name. From the sides of the north, a strong wind carried me. I seen a vision of this beautiful land. In the midst of the wind, I heard the angels sing. Welcome back home. Welcome Zion. Welcome home, Zion. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down. Yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there, they that carried us away captive required of us a song. And they that wasted us required mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. Exiled in Babylon, all alone. Oh, take me home.
All right, shalom, family, and good evening. This is Elder Lawyer filling in today for Elder Ricard Shiar for our Friday Patreon check-in. Before we get into it, I just want to make sure we go ahead and give a few shout-outs for the brothers and sisters who are with us this evening. Then afterwards, we'll jump straight into it, since we do have a lot of information, documentation, and information that we want to cover on the other side. So let's go ahead and get some shout outs. We'll make a few announcements, and then we'll kind of give you a rough overview of what we're going to be covering. But again, we have a lot to deal with. So let's go ahead and see who we have with us. We got W.N. Benson, 6534 from GOCC Cleveland. All right, shalom. Shalom to you all. All right, shalom. We got Brother Kayem. All right. Who else? All right, we got, what's that? John King 5 or John King 4FB from Memphis. We got Sanjo Black R from Birmingham, Alabama. All right, we got NYE Kai Phillips from the Southern California body. We got Micah also from Southern California. We got Amak from GOCC Cincinnati. All right, who else we got with us? All right, we have Malaya Harris from Cincinnati, Ohio. We got Solomon Yasha'Allah Judah from Columbus, Georgia. We got Glorious His from Boston, Massachusetts. All right. We got Jasper Robinson from Memphis, Tennessee. Donald H. 77 from Stockett, Montana. We got Papa Harris from the Florida body. We got Malcolm Hill from Atlanta. We got Tayana Ist from Seattle, Washington. Julianne Davis from the GOCC Houston body. We got Kid Israel from GOCC Minnesota. Roselle the Speaks from ATL. John Jones from Odessa, Texas. We got Smallest. Man, y'all got some difficult names today. What's that? Small Assisted Diving. Maybe because everything is conjoined. There's no spaces. All right, we got Small Assisted Diving Coalition from Tampa of the Orlando body. Shalom to you and the family in Orlando. We got Ruben Israel from New Mexico. We got Hulk Cyberg from New Jersey. We got Kay Gresham from Inglewood, California. All right. Who else we got with us? We got the big dog from Pueblo, Colorado. For those who are in the Colorado area, we do have a baptism tomorrow being conducted by Deacon Quadam and Deacon Yashar of Colorado. So if you're interested, you can send an email to gocccsouth@yahoo.com. We'll try to fit you in at the last minute. Again, that's gocccsouth@yahoo.com. And what I'll do is I'll pass your information on to the brothers who will be there conducting the baptism so that we can get you on that baptism list. For the rest of the family who's with us, I want to say bless you all. Thank you and shalom for your continual support. Thank you for being with us this evening. And we want to thank those who will also happen upon this video in the near future. I want to first and foremost thank the Most High Ahaya Bahashem Yeshai Warvawak for allowing us to come before you for another check-in on our Friday Patreon broadcast. Before we get into our lesson, I want to make a quick announcement in regards to our Hebrew and Bible Academy. This Sunday, we'll be starting week number 4. And in week 4, we're going to be covering the breakdown of who is Edom. And I believe what we're going to be going into today is very timely, especially as it relates to who the Bible calls Edom. Now, for those who are new to this understanding, or those who may happen upon this in the future and may be wondering, well, who is Edom? Well, we're going to slightly, on a surface level, break that down today before we transition to Patreon. But today, we're going to be going into the political side of Esau, the imperialistic side of Esau, and Esau's desire for not just world domination, he've achieved it already. More so his maintenance of world domination, right? He's not striving for it. He's already achieved it. Now he's just trying to maintain his empire, and it just so happens that we are in the end of the age. We are in the end of his time to rule. His time is coming shortly to a close. So now he's doing all he can to maintain the power that he have already obtained. But we're going to get into that once we get on the Patreon side. Again, we're going to try to slightly, in the briefest fashion, explain who Edom is, especially for those who are not acquainted with, for those who have not learned with us, have not studied with us, those who are new to this information, both who are with us live, as well as those who will happen upon this in the future. Now, obviously, if you go to YouTube, we have several lessons dealing with the identity of Edom. So I'm not going to deal with it in depth. We're going to keep it brief, but I'm going to point you to and ask you to go to the various lessons we have done over the years addressing the identity and the history of Edom. And even more so when we get into our Hebrew and Bible Academy. In the Hebrew and Bible Academy, we have a lesson dedicated to the history of who the Bible calls Edom, Esau, the Edomites, the Idumeans, so on and so forth. And that's what we'll be covering this Sunday. So a lot of what we would usually go into as far as going into the history of Esau and his transitioning from one empire to the next, so on and so forth, how he became a nation, how he became the head of many great empires. A lot of that we cover in our academy. So I'm not going to go as in-depth into that today, right? Again, for those who want to be a part of this academy, week number 4, who is Edom, you can go to historytimes.org and enroll in the academy, and everything you need to enroll can be found on this website. But now jumping into today's presentation. And before I do so, I want to give a quick shout out to Brother and Deacon Shaw of the South Carolina body, who blessed myself and Elder Ricard. Let me get up real quick so I can show you all this wonderful hoodie. The Savior coming to a city near you. Okay? Powerful message. An even more powerful design on the hoodie. Again, I want to give a quick shout out to Deacon and Brother Shaw from the South Carolina body. He has a website called alliancewhelp.com. All right, alliancewhelp.com. All right, quick moment. I want to show you all this real quick for those who want to go ahead and check out the brother's website. All right. So again, it's called alliancewhelp.com for those who want to go ahead and Check out the website. Check out some of the merchandise the brother has. Okay, alliancewealth.com. Okay. All right. What are we going to be covering today on the other side? The topic of today's discussion: EDOM'S. EDOM'S Playbook for Imperialism and World Domination, Part 2. For those who remember, some months ago we did a lesson dealing with EDOM'S Playbook for Imperialism and World Domination, Part 1, in which we explored who Edom was, his identity. We explored his ancient empire. To be precise, the Greco-Roman Empire. By Greco-Roman Empire, we mean both his rulership as the Greeks and his rulership as the Romans. And we highlighted the ancient tactics that he used as a means of gaining world domination or gaining superiority over other nations, specifically the nation of Israel, because that's what the Bible focuses on. So we went into it and we showed that the same exact tactics that were employed in the book of Maccabees, when Esau came and under Antiochus Epiphanes, he came to instill and to implement what is called Hellenism in the land of Israel at that time. We showed you that his tactics and his means of accomplishing the goal of instilling and implementing Hellenism is really no different than what you see Esau doing today when he goes into other countries for imperialistic reasoning, right? And we focused in that lesson, we dealt more so with the Middle East based on what was going on at that time. We also dealt with parts of Asia and Africa. Today, we're going to pick up where we left off in that lesson, but our focus is going to be more so on Latin America. So just to give you a quick recap of what we covered the last time, we went into the understanding of what is imperialism and colonization. We're going to touch a little bit on that today, and we're going to do so by going into a record called Power: A Political History of the 20th Century. Now, this book does have a cover that I've lost in the process of time. It was a paper book cover, but many of you know with those paper book covers, sometimes, at least for me, it can become a bit of an annoyance. So because of that, I removed it, but in doing so, I misplaced it. So just so you all know what the book looks like, when you're looking for the book, when you try to order the book, I'm going to pull up an image so you all can see it. Again, the title of the book is Power: A Political History of the 20th Century, edited by C.S. Nichols. On the front, you see Mahatma Gandhi. You see Adolf Hitler. And you see Teddy Roosevelt. Okay? Now we're going to go into this record to kind of document the history of what we call Idumean imperialism, Idumean colonization, or Idumean world domination. Again, for those who don't understand what we mean by Edom, Edomite, Esau, Idumean, we'll explain that in a moment. But we're going to use this record as a means of giving us an introduction to the history of Esau's ability to gain world domination in these relatively recent times. When we go into the Bible, we're dealing more so with the ancient times, ancient history, but we understand that we can also bring it forward to relatively recent times. And we're going to do so using this record. I'm going to read this as a quick excerpt from the book. The rest of the excerpts we're going to read on the other side being Patreon. So this is from page number 8 of the book. Before we read it, let me just show you a few other things we're going to be covering on the other side. How the U.S. broke Libya. Why did the CIA take down Gaddafi? How the Iraq War changed the world. How the CIA created a cocaine dictator. Now, we gotta be a little careful with some of these titles, so we'll save it for the other side. I'm not sure as far as some of the regulations and the rules they have on YouTube, what flies, what doesn't fly, but in the meantime, I'll read a quick excerpt from this book. Then we'll quickly go into the Bible to show those who may not be familiar with the teachings what we mean by Edom, Esau, Idumean, Edomite, so on and so forth. And we're also going to deal with his, well, we're not going to go that far. Again, we're going to reserve a lot of information pertaining to him, his history, his connection to the Greeks and the Romans. We're going to reserve that for our lesson this coming Sunday in the Hebrew Bible Academy titled, Who is Edom? In the meantime, I'm going to read a quick excerpt from the book, Power, A Political History of the 20th Century. So it says, the world in 1900. When the century began, the industrialized nations of the world, those in Europe, North America, and Australia, were bursting with confidence. Their leaders and, by and large, their peoples believed that Western civilization had established itself clearly or as clearly superior to other world lifestyles. And not much has changed in modern times, in today's time. Right? Until the moment that I'm speaking to you through this microphone, Western civilization, the Western world still believes that they have established themselves as a superior nation, okay, or a superior group of nations above all others. This belief even affected the newly emerging industrial power of Japan, where determination to retain independence in the face of Western predators was coupled with a willingness to take over the most important advantages of the West, its technical know-how, and its political organization. So we're going to go into how nations even like Japan, who are not Esau, who are not Edom, how they began to adopt the technical know-how and the political philosophies and the political organization of Edom. Westerners believed that they had an unassailable position with regard to the rest of the world because they were blessed with the Christian religion and the enlightenment of reason. So we're going to find out that Edom always needed a rallying cry, okay? A belief system under which he could unite his people. And they use it as a means of alienating and demonizing those who don't fall under their particular belief system. Now, we're going to explain this more when we get to the other side and we discuss Hellenism and how that was used under the Greek Empire, right? Now they use the Christian religion and their ideas of being enlightened, so on and so forth. But back then, it was Hellenism, right? That was the rallying cry. That was the ideology and the belief system that they tried to unite the European world under, and eventually the rest of the world. But now, obviously, we know it's Christianity. The former had given them moral strength and powerful organizations, reaching centuries back into the past. The latter, celebrated particularly in Northern Europe and North America since the 18th century, encouraged scientific methods, a utilitarian attitude towards the economy, and rational forms of human administration. In the face of this combination, all other civilizations seemed doomed to subjection. So we're going to explain this as we go to the other side on Patreon. From the 17th century, the West had swept aside its Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Confucian, or Shinto rivals. In some cases, as with the great Mughal Empire of India, or the ancient communities of the East Indies, formal subjection to European imperial rulers was well established by 1900. In others, such as the colonial areas of sub-Saharan Africa, Western control was recent and sometimes still contested. The great civilizations of China remained nominally independent, and we're going to stop there. We have many more excerpts from this record, but we're going to stop here. Just giving you a quick introduction into some of what we'll be covering. Now, in explaining very quickly who is Esau, who is Edom, or the Edomites, or the Idumeans. For many of you, this may be foreign terminology. Many of you, though you grew up believing in the Bible, the Holy Bible, Old and New Testament, many of you were discouraged from examining and studying the historical aspects of the Bible. By historical aspects, speaking about the information we find predominantly in the Old Testament and how it relates to what we read in the New Testament. But when you go to the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, the 25th chapter, it tells us the birth of an individual who would play a prominent role not only in biblical history, but also in biblical prophecy. And that person's name at birth would be called Esau. So let's go there very quickly in Genesis, the 25th chapter. And we'll start at the 19th verse. Genesis 25 and 19 today, we'll be following out of the King James Version Bible. Again, as I often mention, many of you, especially those who are with us for the first time. And before I continue, let me just make sure I'm still with you all. All right, we're still good. All right, as I often mention, many of you who may be learning with us relatively recently, or this may be your first month of learning. This may be the first time you've happened upon one of our videos. And many of you have come accustomed to different Bible translations, ones that you'll become accustomed to, comfortable with, ones that maybe your pastor introduced to you, whether it's the ESV, the NET, the NKJV, the Jehovah Witness Bible, the Schofield Bible, or whatever translation you may have used. We in this particular church, the Gathering of Christ Church, we predominantly use what is called the King James Version Bible. And this is the translation we'll be using today as a means of teaching and explaining history and prophecy. Because the KJV Bible, okay, or the Bible in general, is a good tool and source of both history and prophecy. So let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 25 and verse number 19, where it says, "And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel the Syrian, of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him. And Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb." So from this account, we understand that initially Rebekah was barren, meaning she could not have children. After continual prayer, after continual supplication, after continual seeking the Most High and asking the Most High to open her womb so that she could birth children, eventually the Most High heard her prayers, her supplications, and her cries, and he blessed her with children. Now, initially, she was in store or expecting one child. But the Most High had different plans in mind. The Most High saw it fit that this woman, Rebekah, would bring forth 2 children. And from the time that these 2 children were conceived in the womb, there was fighting in the womb or in the belly of their mother. There was contention in the womb and the belly of their mother. Now we're going to find out who these 2 children were. So thus far, we understand that Rebekah, who initially was barren, could not have children, has now conceived 2 children. And of these 2 children, it tells us that they would be the progenitors of 2 separate nations. It says that 2 nations would be in her womb. And 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, which is further explaining what we just read. 2 nations are in her womb. So again, 2 nations of people would spring from these 2 children. 1 womb, 1 belly, 1 woman, and 1 man, Isaac. But out of them would come 2 nations. And 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. So eventually, these 2 children, once they become 2 separate nations, once they grow into 2 separate nations, they will start to separate. And we see that separation take place later down the line in history, where Esau goes into Mount Seir and becomes a nation. And Jacob goes over into the land of his forefathers, the land of Padan Aram. And from there he gets his wives, and then he starts the process of becoming a nation. So it goes on to say, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red all over, like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. So when we say Esau, we're talking about the firstborn son of Isaac and Rebekah. Now, when we say Edom, skipping down, when we say Edom, we're speaking about the same person who, after eating red pottage, had his name changed to Edom. When you go to the book of Genesis chapter 25 and verse number 29, it says, and Jacob sowed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. Now, why is it telling us that he came from the field? Well, we'll go into this in depth in Sunday's lesson. But to keep it basic, to keep it on a low understanding or a low level, one of the attributes of Esau would be that of a hunter. And because he was a hunter, he spent a majority of his time in the field. When we go back up to the book of Genesis chapter 25 and verse number 27, it tells us that the boys grew. The boys being Esau and Jacob. And Esau was a cunning hunter, meaning he was a very skillful and meticulous hunter. A man of the field, meaning he spent a majority of his time in the field. And Jacob was a plain man, meaning he was an upright man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So now we get to verse number 29, and it tells us that Jacob sowed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. Why is he coming from the field? Well, again, we're going to deal with this from an in-depth standpoint when we go into our lesson, Who is Edom, on Sunday. But just to keep it brief, to keep it quaint, to keep it simple, he was a hunter, and he spent the majority of his time from the field. So now he's coming from one of his hunting trips, and he's presenting himself before Jacob, telling him that, listen, I need nourishment. I need something that will replenish my strength. Therefore, he asked his brother Jacob, could he have the red pottage that his brother Jacob was already preparing, was already making for himself? Esau came along and said that, listen, I need that pottage. Please, can I have it? And Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage. Now in the Hebrew it says, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red. Feed me, I pray thee, with that same Adom. Or feed me, I pray thee, with that same Adawam. What does Edom or Adawam mean? Well, in English, we pronounce it Edom. In the translation of Edom, Adawam, or Edom is red. Why? Well, we know, number one, that Esau was red at birth, but the name Edom was not a label given to Esau until he consumed red pottage. And it is from that event of him consuming the red pottage, and not just consuming red pottage, but specifically selling his birthright for a bowl of red pottage. From that event, he became known as Red, Edom, Adawam, or Edom. Jumping down to verse number 34, we're not going to go through the whole thing. Verse number 34 states, Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Now going back up, I want to get this key point. Verse number 30, it says, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom, which means red. Therefore was his name called Edom. Okay. So it says red, Edom, or Adawam, or Edom, as we say in English. Red, Edom, the elder twin brother of Jacob. Hence, the region Idumea. So that's another term you'll hear us use. Idumea, or the Idumeans. Idumea being the Greek word, or the Greek pronunciation for Edom. The Greeks called them Idumeans, or called the area Idumea. Hence the region Idumea occupied by him. Edom, Edomites, Idumea. Another word you'll hear us use. Going to the book of Genesis 36, this will be the last thing we cover before we transition to the other side. And again, we'll explore the connection between Edom or Esau, or the term we're about to cover, the Edomites, in our lesson, Who is Edom?, which will be taught this Sunday. We'll explore that history this Sunday. So it says here in the book of Genesis, chapter 36 and 1. Now these are the generations of Esau. This is the same Esau we just read about in the book of Genesis 25, where it gave us the history of his birth, as well as some of his characteristics, as well as how he sold his birthright. So now these are the generations of Esau. That same Esau, who we saw in Genesis 25, has now began to grow and develop into families, and eventually he would become, out of those families, out of those tribes, they would begin to become nations. So now these are the generations of Esau. Who is Edom? How do we know that Esau is the same person as Edom? Well, all of that history is discussed and unveiled in Genesis 25, where it gives us his birth name, which is Esau, but also it gives us the history of how he obtained the name Edom. So this is the same individual we're reading about in Genesis 36. Now it's going into his family. Esau took his wives of the daughters of Canaan, Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibamah, the daughter of Anah, the daughter of Zibeon the Hivite. Now we jump down to verse number 8, where it tells us, Thus Esau, in fact, let's go here to verse number 6, Remember, the Bible tells us in Genesis 25 that 2 nations would be in the womb of Rebekah. Now it's going into how they became 2 separate nations. Initially, they were just 2 sons. But eventually, these 2 sons would grow, and they would be the progenitors and the fathers of children, and those children would grow into tribes. And hence, those tribes would eventually grow into nations or a nation. So in verse 6, it tells us, and Esau took his wives and his sons and his daughters and all the persons of his house and his cattle and all his beasts and all his substance, which he had gotten in the land of Canaan, and he went into the country from the face of his brother Jacob. So he left the presence of Jacob with his family, with his cattle, with his resources, and he started to now develop and grow his own nation. Speaking of Esau. Verse 7 says, for their riches were more than they might dwell together, and the land wherein they were strangers could not bear them because of their cattle. Verse 8 says, thus Esau dwelt in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. Verse 9, here's the key verse. And these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. So when you hear the term Edomites, Edomites literally means the descendants of Edom. Anytime you see that suffix at the end of a nation, I-T-E-S, when you see the I-T-E-S at the end of Israelites, what does that mean? That means the descendants of Israel, or the descendants of the man Jacob, who eventually would be labeled or called Israel. When you see Ishmaelites, meaning the descendants of the man who was known as Ishmael. Okay? Edomites are the descendants of the man known as Edom. So when we say Edomites, we're talking about the descendants of Edom. I'm not sure if you can see the Strongs. I'm not sure if you can see it, but if you can, let me try to make an adjustment. Right here, when you click on Edomites, now when you click on Edomites, it takes you to H123, which is Edom. Okay, that's the base word from which Edomites comes from. Edomites comes from the word Edom. But let's look at it in the text. Let's see if I have a Hebrew Bible here. Okay. It says here, Wa Allah, and these are the Ladwath, the generations of, or some may say Toldot, the generations of Aishah, or Esau, or Esav, Abiah, father of Adawam, Edom, or the Edomites. Now, usually Edomites would be Adawamya. Adawamya meaning literally of Edom, or the descendants of Edom. Okay? Same thing with Israelite. Israelite would be Yasha'aliyah, or some may say Yisraeli. Okay, that's where they get the term Israeli from. Okay, but nonetheless, we understand that the term Edomite, which is the key point, we understand the term Edomite means a descendant of Edom. And we already explained Idumea. Idumea is simply another pronunciation for Edom. On the other side, we're going to more so deal with the recent political history of Edom and how it relates to its tactics in the ancient history, or when we explore the ancient history of Edom. And I believe it's the one key point that many people don't explore when we're talking about how Esau is maneuvering in the world in these times, right? Many people are able to examine this, obviously, for the sake of understanding and for the sake of context. People are able to explore this and deal with this from a relatively recent standpoint. The furthest they may go back is modern imperialism from the 1900s or from the late 1800s. The difference with us is that we go even further back, because now the Bible is the missing piece that gives us the ultimate context, not only to how Edom operates, but who he is and why he operates the way that he does. Okay? White supremacy is a key component. But Esau's been operating like this long before he adopted the ideology of white supremacy. And we're going to touch on that briefly on the other side, but that's a more relatively recent development within the history of Esau, him dominating and controlling nations under the label of white supremacy. Long before that, Esau has been on the rise in attempting to conquer and dominate the world under various different ideologies and philosophies, some of which we will cover on the other side. And it's through that lens that we're going to give context to what you see and have been seeing, not just in the recent years, but since many of us have been born in the earth. We've been seeing conflict, whether it be in Africa, where Esau, or Rome, that's another term we'll use, Rome, because in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter, it tells us about 4 empires that would rule, the last of which would be the Roman Empire. And we believe that this empire is an extension of the Roman Empire. So we'll use Rome interchangeably with Edom, not to mention, and again, we'll explore this in our lesson, who was Edom, this coming Sunday. But we also understand that there's a historical connection and a prophetic connection between Edom and Rome. But the point is, since many of us have been born in the earth, we've been witnessing conflict, with Esau dealing and dabbling in the business of various nations, whether it be in Africa, whether it be in Asia, whether it be in what they call the Middle East, which the Middle East is in reference to Middle East Asia. That is also considered Asia. You got Far East Asia, which is China, Japan, Vietnam, the Philippines, and those various places that we are familiar with using the term Asian to denote. But then you got what they call the Middle East. Okay, that is in reference to Middle East Asia, or what some may call the Near East or Near East Asia. Then you got Western Asia, which is now moving towards nations along the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, such as the land of Israel, that is labeled and identified as Western Asia. Well, the point I'm making is the fact that Edom has had his dibbling and dabbling in all of these said places, whether it be Far East Asia, Middle East Asia, Western Asia, Europe. Edom or Rome has their fingerprints on the globe. Okay? India. So we see this and have been seeing this as long as we have existed, and we wonder why. What business does he have in trying to control and direct the comings and the goings of Asia, the comings and the goings of Africa, the comings and the goings of what they call Latin America and South America? What business does he have in these nations? Well, today we're going to give the context. All of that will be reserved for the Patreon side, in which we're about to go now. For those who are interested in Patreon, you can go to our Patreon website. Okay, A Gathering 144 Patreon. In fact, if someone can put that in the chat, put the link there. And for those who are interested in following us on that side and getting the full lesson, and we have a very long lesson we're gonna deal with today, with a lot of information. I would say buckle your seatbelt, lock in, because we're gonna be here for a while. So if you're interested, someone can put that Patreon in the chat, and let's get ready to transition. All right, the water, Elder Dale. All right, so let's do it. EDOM'S Playbook for Imperialism and World Domination, Part 2. For those who are interested in the Bible Academy, go to historytimes.org. And if it be the Most High's will, Elder Akashiar will be with us tomorrow for the Sabbath. So look forward to that for those who are looking forward to the Sabbath lesson. Until next time, I want to say bless you all and shalom. Thank you for your continual support. As we always mention, we cannot do this work without you all and your support. So with that, I want to say bless you all and shalom. And may you all enjoy your Sabbath. Shalom.
The Bible. Is it hard to understand?
When it comes to reading the Bible, the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that this is the Word of God.
The seals have been broken, and the truth is here.
And when we go throughout the scriptures, when we go throughout extra biblical records, we find that the language that God employed, that he used to create the heavens and the earth, was the Hebrew language.
Christ said, I came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But yet no one, no religious leader, no religious church out there anywhere can now identify the 12 tribes of Israel. Can we? God is quite simple, but it seems as if man makes understanding him hard.
What are those mysteries?
The truth of your book and the truth will make you free. The Hebrew and Bible Academy, you're invited.